Back, it's Dean here at the Secret Underground Lair. We're starting work on the lift mechanism for the Worktable sawmill. Now this is going to be accomplished by running fundamentally a threaded rod down each side into a T-nut that will be mounted on the bottom of the cross member here. Now with a threaded rod on either side, I want to make sure that they turn in sync, so hence the need for a chain and sprocket that will run across the top of the beam from side to side. There's a weld-on socket here that the sprocket will be attached, and then I got this 3/8 coupling nut. That 3/8 coupling nut, I'm going to grind it just a little wee bit. It almost fits in that hole, so I'm just going to grind it down a little bit, insert that in the hole, and that'll be welded in place and keep the threaded rod centered within the sprocket. Then we'll run a jam nut up against that to keep it tight on the threaded rod itself. The chain will run to another sprocket that runs on the other side, and to this end of the threaded rod we'll be attaching a handle. So as I turn the handle, it'll spin both sprockets and draw the threaded rod up both sides equally. So let's get started with that business. Just tacking him in about 3 places. This isn't going to be undergoing a lot of stress, so I'm not really concerned about getting this thing super welded up. I just want to make sure it's tacked in place and held tightly. So there's one piece done. We'll move on to the second one. We're going to call that done. So next phase. So I'll be drilling through this beam almost all the way. I'm just going to let the tip of the bit poke through the other side so I don't get a lot of tear out. I can come back and drill that out cleanly later. Now we'll just come back through the far side and do a clean cut just where the hole is poking through. Very happy with that. For those wondering, that is a 7/16 inch hole. That's exactly the diameter of the outer side of the T-nut. So that will just, with a little persuasion, slip right in there. I may need to go up a 64th in bit just to make sure that that goes in nicely. This is a very hard wood and I don't want to force things through. So next we'll get the T-nuts mounted. Actually, before I do the T-nuts, I need to clamp this onto the upper beam and drill up through that way to make sure I get everything lined up just perfectly. So we'll get that started next. Okay, I've got the saw beam clamped onto the top beam, upside down of course, and ready to drill the holes using the ones we just did on the drill press as a guide. To line this up, what I did is I found the center mark of both beams, marked that with a line. I set it up perfectly in line here now, so I know that this beam is in the center of this beam, and now I can drill this hole knowing that these will line up perfectly. So we'll get these holes won't go all the way through. This drill bit is of course a little short, so we'll go through as far as we can, and then on both ends take this off and then finish the drill with the beam off. Alright, I'm going to go put this back on the drill press just so I can get a nice clean cut, perfectly straight, and also I want to be able to stop the drill at the right point so I don't go perfing through the other side and doing a lot of tear out. So we'll go back to the drill press just to finish this off. Alright, we have our holes now for the threaded rod. I'll put the structure back together with a loose fit and we'll get this thing assembled. Alrighty, we now have the threaded rods inserted right through to the very top. You can see the sprocket with the coupling nut welded through the center, a jam nut and a washer. The chain now runs right across the length of the beam. You can see that I have inserted in here a little spacer block that'll provide, I'm going to call that the chain guide. So it'll guide the chain, and we can look down the beam and see how that chain will run across that beam to the other sprocket on the far side. Right now I have a pair of vice grips clamped on there so I can do the winding up and down just to make sure that it all works, and it does seem to run fine. The next piece is going to be providing some guides along the rails here to keep the beam from sliding back and forth. You can see that. So these brackets that I'm going to make are being made out of this steel. This is some scrap iron that I had given to me some time ago. A few pieces of that. It's about 3/16 of an inch thick by about 1 1/4 inches wide. We're going to be making a V-shaped bracket here so that we get a little bit more clearance on either side. So we'll get on with that now. I'll be cutting the strap for the worktop sawmill using this little portable bandsaw. On a trip that I took to Detroit a number of years ago, I picked this up from Harbor Freight for like 90 bucks while it was on sale. This proved to be a really valuable little tool for me. I've used it an awful lot, and I built this little stand so that it forms somewhat, like a cutoff saw. Just using a piece of angle iron that I welded and then bolted onto the saw. Nothing fancy. It doesn't have to be fancy, it just has to do the job, and this works really well. So I'll set up and get these 4 pieces cut. All right, we got all 8 pieces cut. So we'll start by putting on, marking up and getting some pieces ready to be welded together like so. So I'll just get that set up, marked, and then we'll take it over, probably grind off a little bit here with the grinder and a cutting wheel, and then we'll weld that up. All right, 2 pieces cut, ready for welding, and you can see we put a little bit of an edge on these 2 pieces to give the weld a little better penetration. So we'll get that welded up now. Then we'll come back and we'll do the other pieces. All right, so there's our first piece welded up. There'll be a little bit of trimming to do on the left side there. But the intention now is that we can put that on kind of like that. So I'm going to weld up the other pieces first, and then we'll have 4 brackets that we can start to assemble onto this beam. Alrighty, I got all 4 pieces welded up. Next step will be to do a little bit of grinding. I just want to make sure these areas here are nice and flat so they will sit up flush against the beam. And there's our 4 brackets all shiny and new. We'll next put them up on the beam, determine where we want to drill the holes. Then we'll drill pairs of them together. So we'll put 2 of them together like so. Sorry. I'll put 2 of them together like so and drill holes through both of them at the same time. So hole here, about here, about here. Drilling out the brackets, I'm starting with the little pilot hole, just a 9/64 bit, a little bit of WD-40 cutting fluid. I find this works really well to help with the drill bit. And away we go. Change bits, we'll move up to the 5/16 and come back when that's set up. Okay, we're all set up with the 5/16 bit. Put a bit of lube right on the bit itself this time, and a little bit there around the area. Away we go. All right, there's our holes all cut. Very happy with that. Two pieces will be identical holes. We'll clamp up the other two brackets for the other side, drill those holes. Then I'm going to take the beam completely apart and drill the holes right through the whole structure. Then we can put the brackets and the beam back together. So I'll come back when we're ready to do the beam. Okay, I'm ready to drill out the beam now for the holes that will hold the brackets. So I've marked the holes where I'm going to be drilling. A line here indicates where the center line for the threaded rod is going to be. There you can see the T-nut. So these holes will miss, clearly we want to miss that threaded rod. So the holes are going to be offset a little bit, and a hole here. So they've been set, put in a center punch mark just to make sure the drill bit will guide it correctly, and away we go. Again, I'm only going to be drilling as deep just to get the point of the bit penetrating the other side of the beam. Then I'll flip it over and make another hole from the other side to get a clean cut. There's our 3 holes cut. We have just a little bit of penetration on the other side, so I'll knock those out. Coming back the other way now. Clean holes all the way through on both sides. So I will now flip the beam over to the other side and come back when all the holes are drilled. By the way, I want to mention that these holes are being drilled just a little bit oversized. Instead of being 5/16, I'm actually drilling them at 3/8, so there's a little bit of wiggle room should these brackets not be exactly the way I want them. So I can do a little bit of fiddling with it. Okay, I'll come back when these are drilled. Now the holes are cut, we'll put the brackets onto the beam, like so. This is the tricky part. Wonderful, just fit on perfectly. So that went on very well. I will likely have to put a small spacer. I'll probably use a thin washer on each of these 3 bolts between the bracket and the beam, just to give a little extra clearance as it rises up and down the vertical post. So I'll get the bracket put up on the other side, and we'll give this thing a test fit. And we'll call that a video. All right, I've attached my drill to the top of the Worktable sawmill, and it's alive! It goes up and down. So how about that? We now have a working, loose working assembly. The next bit I'll probably do off camera will be just tighten up all the bolts. I'll firm up these joints, set them permanently. I need to have them set permanently before we put in the bearings here on the guides to keep, minimize or eliminate this movement. But there we are. It goes up and down. Woohoo! Please like and subscribe.